My son dropped me off at the hospital and never came back. I thought maybe something happened to him, until I checked my bank account and saw it drained. He took my insurance money while I was recovering from a stroke. Before I begin my story, I just want to say thank you for listening to me pour my heart out. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love hearing from you. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. It helps me more than you know. Now let me tell you my story. I woke up to a ceiling I didn't recognize and four in my arm, and a monitor beeping too loud for my liking. My throat was dry, my tongue heavy, and there was a strange pressure on the left side of my face. It took a few seconds before I realized where I was, and why. Hospital. Stroke. That word hit like a brick. I remembered sipping my peppermint tea on the porch when my hands started trembling. Then my mouth. I dropped the cup and knocked the table. I managed to call Reggie, my son. He came quick, or at least he sounded like he did. Told me not to worry, that everything would be okay. That I'd be in good hands. He held my purse in one hand and my shoulder with the other. That was the last time I saw him. The nurse checked my vitals later that morning. I asked, "Has my son been by?" She hesitated. "Not today, Miss Shaw. But maybe later." Later came and went. So did the next day. Then the next. No flowers. No fresh clothes. No one. By the fourth day I stopped asking. By the fifth, the discharge nurse looked at me with pity and said, "Do you have someone picking you up?" I lied. Yes. I took the discharge papers in one hand and called a cab with the other. Thank God I still had $20 tucked behind my ID card. I hadn't touched it since Christmas. The cab driver didn't talk. I appreciated that. My voice still felt like it belonged to someone else. When I got home, everything was still and cold. The porch light was out. My plants were dying. The mail was stacked high and untouched. I opened the door and stepped into my living room, expecting the familiar warmth of home. But all I got was quiet. The kind that doesn't comfort, it suffocates. And something felt. I walked over to the kitchen counter to check the calendar and nearly slipped on an envelope. It was a hospital bill. But it was already marked paid in full. I furrowed my brow. I hadn't paid anything. I didn't even know how much the bill was. I hadn't seen it yet. I tried to log into my online bank account. My usual password didn't work. Tried another. Locked out. Tried calling the bank. Waited 43 minutes on hold before someone answered. "Ma'am, I see here the password and contact number were updated 2 days ago." "By who?" "Mr. Reggie Shaw. He was listed as your authorized party." I almost dropped the phone. That was the first knife. Then came the second. I called my insurance company to ask about billing. That's when the representative cheerfully told me my supplemental policy payout had already been processed. $18,000, she said like it was a miracle. "What payout?" I asked. "Your critical recovery benefit. It was filed last week. The funds were released and deposited into the account ending in 0944. I never filed anything. Can you tell me the name on the account?" I asked. "Reggie Shaw. It says he's your son." That was the moment I stopped shaking. Not because the fear was gone, but because the fury had arrived. I thanked her, hung up, and sat down in the kitchen chair where I used to grade Reggie's homework. Where I used to cry after bills and pray after work and plan his birthday cakes on a notepad. It had scratches in the wood from his toddler years. It still had his initials carved in the underside. And now he had used my own name to steal my future. He didn't just take money. He took my dignity, my security, and every ounce of faith I had left in him. Left me lying in a hospital bed alone while he smiled for Instagram and drank champagne. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my hallway closet and dug out an old manila envelope with a card I hadn't touched in 22 years. It was from a girl named Sonia Blanchard, one of my brightest former students. She sent it after she passed the bar, said, "If you ever need me, Miss Shaw, I'll be there." I picked up the phone. She answered on the second ring. "Blanchard Law." "Sonia," I said. "It's Miss Shaw." She gasped. "Miss Shaw, is everything okay?" "No," I said. "But it's about to be." I told her everything, about the hospital, the account changes, the fake claim, the forged access. She didn't interrupt once. She just listened, like the student she used to be. When I finished, her voice had changed. "Reggie messed with the wrong woman," she said. "Good," I replied. "Because I'm not the same one who raised him." She set up a time to meet in person. Said she'd pull the account activity and file an emergency freeze. I gave her permission to act on my behalf. For the first time in days I felt like I could breathe. Not because I had my money back. Not yet. But because I had something better. A plan. They thought I was too old. Too slow. Too tired to notice. They forgot who taught them how to play the game. Now it was my turn. And I wasn't coming to talk. I was coming to take. Sonia didn't waste time. By the next morning she had pulled my file, verified the forged documents, and filed a financial fraud report with my insurance company. She also walked me through changing all my banking credentials, setting up identity protection, and requesting a complete statement of every transaction linked to my name over the last 3 months. She read every detail out loud so I could hear it for myself. There was, clear as day, 3 claim payments, $18,000, $12,000, and another 6. My name, my policy, my social security number, deposited into an account registered under a fake company called Shaw Wellness Consulting. I nearly choked. That boy created a company in my name? I asked. Sonia sighed. He filed the LLC online. Used a third-party banking platform to open a business account. That's how he funneled the money. He thought he'd be clever. He wasn't clever. He was cowardly. She also discovered that he had rerouted my monthly disability check. That's what stunned me most. The little bit I received every month, barely enough to cover my prescriptions and groceries, was being diverted into another account. He'd submitted a change of address form and told them I'd moved in with him. I hadn't seen Reggie's doorstep in over a year. I don't want a refund, I told Sonia. I want justice. You'll get it, she promised. She asked if I wanted to press charges now or wait. Wait, I said. I want him to feel safe first. Let him think he got away with it. Because this wasn't just about getting my money back. This was about watching the fear on his face when he realized the ground under him wasn't just shaking. It was gone. 2 weeks passed. I said nothing to Reggie. He called once, acting like nothing happened. Hey Ma. Just checking in. You good? Oh, I'm doing okay, I said sweetly. Just taking it slow. Resting. That's good, that's good. Hey, Candace and I are thinking of starting a business. Something wellness-focused, you know? Helping people get their lives on track. I wanted to spit. Instead I said, sounds wonderful, baby. Just be careful who you trust. He laughed. Always, Ma. Always. When we hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the wall. Not angry. Not heartbroken. It's a strange thing when your heart stops hurting. You expect peace, but what you get is clarity. You see the truth for what it is. Not colored by hope. Not softened by memories. Just sharp, brutal fact. Reggie didn't love me. Not in any way that counted. He loved what I gave him. What I sacrificed. What I saved. He loved the comfort I provided, the food I cooked, the bills I paid. He loved the foundation I built, but never once looked down to see what it cost me. No. He saw me as a liability. An old woman with shaky hands and a brain he thought was too fogged to notice. But I noticed. And I remembered. Sonia had filed all the paperwork. A civil suit for fraud. An insurance investigation. And a quiet freeze on all accounts connected to Shaw Wellness Consulting. It would take another week or 2 for the banks to finish their audit. Until then we waited. And I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was still standing. That Saturday I went to the grocery store near my neighborhood. First time in weeks. I took my time walking the aisles, leaning on the cart for balance. People nodded politely. The cashier smiled wide. But right there in the frozen food section I saw him. Reggie. He was walking ahead with Candace, pushing a cart full of wine, steaks, and name-brand everything. She was talking fast like she always did, pointing at things, throwing them in without looking at prices. He was nodding, laughing, looking like the good provider. My blood didn't boil. It froze. I stepped down the other aisle and waited. When they passed, I came back out and finished my shopping. But I left that store knowing one thing. They were about to lose everything they thought they owned. The next week Sonia called. It's time, she said. Everything's confirmed. You ready? More than ready. The following Friday, Reggie and Candace hosted a small cookout in their backyard. Family, a few of his friends, some church folks. I wasn't invited, of course. But I showed up anyway. Wearing white. Holding a lemon pie. Candace opened the door. Her face dropped. Miss Evelyn. Oh, hi. We weren't expecting. I know, I said. Thought I'd just stop by. I brought pie. She blinked. That's sweet. Reggie appeared behind her. Ma, what are you doing here? Just wanted to see how my investments were doing, I said. He looked confused. Nervous. I walked past him into the backyard and handed the pie to a woman from church. Then I turned and handed Reggie a manila envelope. What's this? He asked. Your future. He opened it and froze. Inside was the court summons, the civil suit for fraud, the insurance documentation, and a printed spreadsheet of every dollar he'd taken. Candace read over his shoulder. Her face went pale. You told me that money was from a bonus. Reggie didn't speak, just stared at me. I patted his shoulder. Good luck at the hearing, baby. I hear judges don't take kindly to elder fraud these days. And I walked out without a word more. Because some things don't need to be shouted. They just need to be served cold. It was quiet for 2 days after the cookout. No calls. No texts. No Facebook posts from Reggie. I expected as much. His silence was never out of respect. It was always out of fear. I could picture him sitting at the edge of his bed with that envelope still in his hands, probably reading it for the 10th time, trying to figure out how I pulled it off. How the woman he left in a hospital bed alone had somehow flipped the script. But I wasn't alone. I had Sonia. And I had a long memory. I spent those 2 days cleaning my house. Not in a rush, not to keep busy, but with intention. I pulled old picture frames off the shelves, wiped them with warm cloth, and took a good long look at each one. Reggie as a toddler with spaghetti all over his face. Reggie in his cap and gown holding his diploma with that crooked grin. Me and Reggie at his wedding, when I didn't know yet how much that smile cost me. I dusted them, kissed the glass, and put them all in a box. I wasn't erasing him. But I wasn't going to honor someone who treated me like an afterthought. On the 3rd morning my phone rang. I was stirring oatmeal and humming to the radio when I saw his name flash on the screen. I didn't pick up. Let it go to voicemail. He tried again. And again. On the 4th call I answered. Ma, please. I didn't say anything. Just listened. Ma, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought you were going to be okay. I thought you'd get the money eventually. It wasn't meant to go this far. You filed a fake business under my name, I said calmly. You diverted my disability income. You forged signatures. You filed 3 fraudulent claims using my private health records. He was quiet. I could hear him breathing. I was just trying to get ahead, he mumbled. By stepping on your mother? It wasn't like that. Well, then explain it. I didn't mean to hurt you. I waited for more. For the part where he apologized without excuses. For the moment he admitted he did it out of greed, not necessity. But it never came. He asked if I could talk to Sonia. Said the court stuff was ruining everything. That Candace had left. That the business account was frozen. That he couldn't pay rent. I stirred my oatmeal again. I'm sorry you're struggling, Reggie. I truly am. But you had 2 choices. You picked the one where I stop being your mother and start being your consequence. That's cold, Ma. So was leaving me in a hospital bed. I hung up before he could answer. The next week was a whirlwind. Sonia had everything moving like clockwork. The insurance investigation was officially open. Their legal team had verified every forged claim, every fake document, every account opened in my name. The civil suit was scheduled for hearing in 3 weeks. Reggie was being charged with elder financial abuse and identity fraud. A conviction could mean jail time, but Sonia said we were going to press for restitution instead. I didn't need him in a cell. I needed him to live with the weight of what he did, every day while rebuilding his life from nothing. In the meantime, Sonia helped me set up a recovery account. The insurance company had already agreed to refund my benefits due to the verified fraud. A restitution claim was also filed with the bank. They froze the accounts and began legal forfeiture proceedings. I received the first reimbursement check by certified mail that Friday. $36,000. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Not because of the amount, but because of what it symbolized. That money had once been stolen from me. Taken behind my back while I was unconscious in a sterile room, eating Jell-O off a plastic tray and wondering if my son would walk through the door. He never did. But this envelope? This came with accountability. I deposited the check, then sat down with Sonia to plan the rest. We agreed I'd set aside some funds for home upgrades. New carpet, a better heater for the winter, maybe even that electric recliner I'd been eyeing for years. But more importantly, we set up a foundation. I called it the Evelyn Shaw Emergency Fund. A small, quiet program that would help elderly women caught in financial abuse, especially those targeted by their own family. I wasn't starting a charity. I was building an escape hatch for women like me. Women who gave everything and were left with nothing. Reggie didn't call again. But Candace did. She left me a voice message. Said she didn't know what Reggie had done. Said she was sorry I was dragged into it. That if she'd known she would have spoken up. That she never wanted things to turn out this way. She didn't ask for forgiveness. And I respected that. I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't out of reach. But it wasn't owed either. A few days later I saw Reggie at the pharmacy. He was waiting in line, hunched over, his shoulders tight like the weight of it all had finally settled into his spine. I didn't speak. I didn't glare. I just stood behind him. Quiet. He turned and saw me. Our eyes met. He opened his mouth to speak. I shook my head. He closed it. And left without saying a word. I paid for my blood pressure pills and walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. Because he could keep his silence. I had already found my peace. I didn't tell many people what happened. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to hold it close. Letting it spread would have made it messier louder. I didn't need anyone's pity. I didn't need poor Evelyn murmured over after church dinners or women hugging me with eyes full of sorrow. I had already had my fill of empty sympathies. What I needed now was movement. So I moved. I started the morning early, wiping down the old wooden table in the kitchen where I'd first taught Reggie to write his name. Funny how that same boy would later use my name to steal from me. Still, I wiped it clean, humming an old hymn as I moved. It wasn't grief that slowed me. It was the weight of knowing that healing doesn't always come from being held. Sometimes it comes from holding your own line. With the fund now set up and the first public donation pledged by Sonia herself, I walked into the community center with a file folder under my arm and a cardigan over my shoulders. The room was smaller than I imagined, but the energy in it was solid. 3 older women were already seated when I arrived. One wore a scarf around her head, one had thick reading glasses, and the last had a cane resting against her chair. All 3 turned when I walked in. And when they smiled I saw it, recognition. Not of me personally, but of the pain I carried. Of the fight. I introduced myself softly. They didn't need the whole story. Just enough to let them know that I'd been through something too. One of them, Miss Bernadine, said her daughter drained her account by slowly helping with her bills. Another, Gloria, said her grandson had used her card to buy an iPhone and tried to blame it on a hacked account. The third just nodded quietly but held my hand a little longer than necessary. We didn't cry. We planned. That night I stood on my porch and watched the sun go down behind the trees, the sky painted in soft blues and sharp golds. I made a promise to myself that whatever came next I wouldn't just survive it, I'd shape it. My life didn't end in that hospital bed. It restarted. With clarity. With purpose. And with a sharpened sense of what it meant to reclaim not just your money but your voice. The next morning Sonia called. The court date was confirmed. Reggie would stand before the judge in just under 2 weeks. She'd already spoken to the prosecutor and presented the full fraud record. There was enough evidence to bury him if I wanted to. But I didn't want prison. I wanted repayment. I wanted every cent he took returned. I wanted every sleepless night he caused compensated. I wanted every ounce of pride he stripped from me to cost him something he'd actually feel. Let him keep walking free. But let him walk broke. Sonia was prepared to argue for maximum restitution and an enforceable garnishment order. He'd be paying me back monthly for the next 10 years minimum. And if he defaulted, we'd seize whatever pitiful accounts he tried to hide behind. She even filed a freeze on any future tax returns. If he tried to run, his own money would chase him. That was enough. Later that afternoon I stepped into the hair salon on Main Street. The same one I hadn't visited in months. The women there knew me well, too well, and yet no one asked anything more than, "Trim or color today, Miss Evelyn?" I smiled and said, "Both." They cheered and pulled me to the chair. By the time I walked out of there, my gray curls had shape again. My eyebrows were neatened. My cheeks held just enough rouge to feel fresh. I looked like myself again, not the version Reggie expected to leave in a gown, barely aware, waiting to be forgotten. I looked alive. I stopped by the grocery store, picked up fresh okra, a few pears, and a lemon pie on sale. Then I made one final stop. Reggie's apartment. It wasn't far. Just 2 turns off the main road, up a hill with chipped sidewalks. I knew he wouldn't be expecting me, especially now that Candace had left. The mailbox was rusted. A package sat unopened on the step. I didn't knock. I left a copy of the court filing taped to the door. And on top of that, a receipt. The insurance refund check. My name. The recovered amount. And a short note that said, "You took what you thought I'd never miss. Now watch how far I make it go." I didn't wait around to see if he came outside. Didn't care if he read it right then or tore it up in front of the mirror. I walked away in silence. Just the sound of my heels on concrete and the wind against my coat. That night I cooked okra stew with cornbread and sat down with a glass of sweet tea. My TV played softly in the background, some old rerun from the 90s. But my eyes were on the framed certificate Sonia had given me earlier that week. Read. Evelyn. Founder Shaw Emergency Fund for Elder Protection. Established 2025. I traced the edge of the frame with my finger and smiled. Because now, every dollar Reggie paid back wouldn't just sit in my account. It would serve women like me. Women who were forgotten, underestimated, taken for granted. He didn't just pay for what he stole. He paid forward something far bigger. And that's the kind of debt you never shake. The day of the hearing came faster than I expected. I spent the night before ironing my navy blue slacks and pressing the soft-collared blouse I only wore to graduations and funerals. I didn't want to look like a victim. I wanted to look like the woman Reggie tried to erase and failed. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because of age or lines or soft skin, but because I was standing straighter. Like something heavy had finally lifted. Sonia picked me up in a black sedan she borrowed from her firm. She looked sharp as ever, hair tied back, glasses on, folder in her lap. She greeted me with a soft nod and a quiet, "You ready?" I didn't answer. I just nodded once and we drove. The courthouse wasn't anything special. Plain building. Faded flag out front. Few people loitering around with tired eyes and cheap coffee. But to me, that courtroom was the place I was finally going to breathe without anger sitting in my chest. Reggie was already there when we arrived. Sitting 3 benches forward, head bowed. No lawyer. Just him, a cheap wrinkled suit, and the weight of every wrong decision he'd made in the last year. He didn't see me at first. I sat down with Sonia and let him sweat. The judge arrived and opened the docket. He flipped through papers, adjusted his glasses, and spoke into the quiet room like he'd done it 1,000 times. But when he called Reggie's name and started reading the charges, it didn't feel like just another case. It felt personal. "Mr. Reggie Shaw, you are charged with the following: financial fraud, identity theft, forgery, and elder exploitation," the judge said. "Do you understand these charges?" Reggie stood slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." Sonia stood and presented our case clearly. No frills. No emotion. Just the facts. Reggie had filed false claims on my insurance, used a fake business name to launder the payouts, and rerouted my monthly checks into his own account for nearly 5 months. She submitted bank statements, notarized documents, and even included screenshots of Reggie messaging Candace, joking about milking mom's policy. The courtroom was silent as the judge flipped through each page. He turned to Reggie. "Do you have anything to say before I rule?" Reggie cleared his throat. His voice was small. "I didn't mean to hurt my mom," he said. I was in a bad place. I thought she'd be okay. I figured I'd replace the money before she noticed. I didn't think she'd press charges." The judge raised an eyebrow. "So your defense is that you expected her to stay quiet?" "No, I panicked. I messed up." The judge turned to me. "Miss Shaw, would you like to speak?" I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my back was straight. My son left me in a hospital bed. He used my recovery as an opportunity to steal, not to show care. And he didn't stop after one transaction. He kept going. He changed passwords. He forged documents. He created a whole lie to keep bleeding me dry. So yes, Your Honor, I noticed. And yes, I pressed charges. Because if I hadn't, what would have stopped him from doing it again? The judge nodded. "Thank you." I sat back down and squeezed Sonia's hand. When the ruling came, it landed like thunder. Reggie was found liable on all civil counts. The judge issued a full restitution order, $43,800 to be paid over the next 10 years, with wage garnishment applied to any form of income. All fraudulent accounts were frozen. If he missed a single payment, a felony fraud case would be reopened, and he would face criminal sentencing. It wasn't jail, but it was something better. He'd be reminded of what he did every month when the deduction hit his check. Every time he checked his balance. Every job he applied to. Every tax season. That was the kind of punishment that lingers. That reshapes a man's spine over time. After the hearing, Reggie approached me in the hallway. His voice was cracked, eyes damp. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. "Ma," he said, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know that don't fix it. I didn't say anything." He kept going. Candace left. She moved back with her sister. The business is gone. I'm trying to find work, but with the freeze. I held up my hand. "I didn't come here to hear about your consequences," I said. "I came here to collect on what's mine." He blinked hard. "I really messed up." "You didn't mess up," I said. "You made choices. Over and over. You chose yourself. Now I'm choosing me." He tried to speak again, but I turned and walked away. Later that evening, I sat on my porch with a blanket over my knees, listening to crickets and sipping warm tea. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was still. The kind of stillness that comes after surviving a storm you didn't ask for. I opened the envelope Sonia had handed me. Inside was the formal court record, the settlement terms, and the first monthly restitution deposit. Direct transfer. Automatic. He wouldn't be able to stop it even if he tried. I flipped through the papers, then placed them under my Bible. Then I walked into my kitchen and opened a notebook. At the top I wrote, "Shaw Emergency Fund Expansion Plan." Because while Reggie had stolen from me, he had also, without meaning to, funded something bigger. That money wasn't just repayment. It was restoration. It would go to women like Bernadine and Gloria and the ones who were too ashamed to speak up. Reggie didn't just pay for what he took. He paid for something righteous. And every time his account emptied, I'd be filling someone else's cup. People say revenge is loud. That it's fire and fury and screaming at the top of your lungs. But that's not how it really is. Not for people like me. For women like me, older, overlooked, written off, revenge is quiet. It's steady. It's the sound of legal documents sliding across a wooden bench. It's a signature written in calm hands. It's your son staring at you from across a courtroom, realizing you're not the fragile woman he thought he could fool. A month after the court ruling, the first payment hit my account. $438.72. It wasn't the number that mattered. It was the silence that followed. No calls. No texts. Reggie had learned, finally, that this wasn't a negotiation. I didn't want his tears. I didn't need his apologies. I didn't care about what Candace did or didn't say before she packed her bags. I cared that for the next 10 years, my name would appear on his bank statement every single month. A reminder. A scar. That's how I wanted it. Not for spite. But because if I didn't remind him of what he did, he'd forget. And forgetting would mean he could do it again. To someone else. Maybe to another mother. Maybe to a woman who didn't have a Sonia or the strength to press charges. I was still living in the same house. Still had the same furniture, the same lace curtains in the living room that my sister said were outdated. But the air was different now. It didn't feel heavy. I could walk through my own home without feeling like someone else's shadow lived there. No more wondering what Reggie was plotting behind my back. No more pretending he just needed time. I didn't cry anymore. I started sleeping deeper. The community fund was growing faster than I imagined. We hosted a small luncheon at the church basement. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and sweet tea and a sheet cake with Shaw Fund Launch written in blue icing. We didn't need a fancy banquet. We had stories. Women came up to me after and whispered thank yous like I'd done something heroic. I hadn't. I just decided not to be quiet anymore. One woman, Doris, said her grandson had taken out a credit card in her name and used it to buy sneakers. She cried when I told her we'd cover the consultation fee with a lawyer. Another lady, Miss Thelma, said her son had been collecting her checks without telling her. I thought I was just forgetful, she said. Turns out I was just trusting the wrong people. Those women reminded me why I kept pushing. Why I didn't settle. Why I didn't let Reggie sweet talk his way out of what he did. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who gets told she's losing it when really someone else is just stealing. A few weeks later, I was walking out of the pharmacy when I saw Reggie across the street. He didn't see me at first. He was hunched over, checking his phone, dressed in worn-out khakis and a wrinkled shirt. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from work, but the kind that comes from being found out. He glanced up and saw me. Our eyes locked. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just stood there. I didn't cross the street. I didn't offer him anything. I turned and walked away. That was the power he didn't understand. That I could look at him and feel nothing. Not rage. Not guilt. Just clarity. 2 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. I recognized the handwriting, though. It said, "Ma, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I wanted to let you know I got a job. Warehouse work. First real one I've had in years. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm paying what I owe. I'll never ask you to change the ruling. I'll never speak on it again. I'm sorry, Reggie." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer with the court records. Not because I needed to keep it, but because I wanted a reminder of what it took to reclaim my life. The next weekend, Sonia took me to the ribbon-cutting ceremony for our new legal resource room at the community center. She asked me to say a few words. I stood behind the podium in my Sunday best, looked out at a sea of faces, mostly women, and said this. I once trusted someone I loved not to betray me. I thought family meant protection. But when that trust was broken, I had two choices: stay silent or speak up. I chose my voice. And now, because of that, we're building something that will help other women speak up too. They clapped. I stepped down and stood beside Sonia as we cut the ribbon together. Later that night, I sat on my porch with the newsletter in my lap and a photo from the event taped to the top. I looked out into the dark, let the breeze wrap around my shoulders like an old friend. I had spent my whole life giving. Now I'd finally taken something back. Not out of anger. Out of survival. And from that day forward, every time I saw that monthly deposit in my bank account, I didn't think of Reggie. I thought of every woman who would never again doubt what she deserved.